Welcome, dear heart, to Driftwood Stories, where lanterns glow in quiet windows and forest paths lead not just through trees, but through time itself. Tonight we journey into a tale of still waters and strange voices, of an unlikely promise made beside a willow-shaded spring, of magic not born in spells, but in the keeping of one's word. It is a story about a princess. Not vain, not wicked, only young, and a frog who was not quite what he seemed. Here enchantments do not break in flashes and fire, but in quiet choices, in honour, in trust. So rest now. Let your thoughts drift like leaves upon the surface of the water, and listen as we begin the tale of the Frog Prince of the Willow Spring. Chapter 1. The Ball in the Willow Spring. Long ago, in a kingdom softened by moss and mist, where the hills rolled like green silk and the woods whispered in a language older than names, there lived a king with 3 daughters. The youngest was not the cleverest, nor the most beautiful, but she had a quiet charm, the kind that grows in shadows and songs. Her hair was the colour of ripe wheat, and her eyes held the soft grey of rain-washed stone. She liked quiet places, half-forgotten corridors, and walking barefoot in the gardens long after the bells had stopped ringing. One of her most beloved treasures was a ball, not just any ball, but a golden one, round and smooth and heavy in the hand. It had been given to her by her nursemaid on her 7th name day, and she loved it with a fierce and private devotion. Each day, when her lessons were done and the courtiers had finished their endless bowing, she would slip from the castle, down the winding path that led beyond the apple trees and into the edge of the ancient wood. There, hidden between the roots of 2 great willow trees, lay a spring. Clear and still, it reflected the sky like polished glass. In summer, dragonflies danced across its surface. In autumn, it held the colour of fading leaves, and in winter it whispered secrets through its ice. She came here almost daily, to sit, to think, to toss her golden ball high into the air and catch it again, sometimes whispering little rhymes, sometimes listening to the rustle of the trees. But on one such afternoon, one that began like any other, sun warm on the grass, a breeze like breath across the skin, she threw her ball just a little too high. It glinted in the air, turned once, and fell, not to her hands, but with a heavy splash, straight into the centre of the spring. She gasped. Kneeling at the edge, she peered into the water. The ball had vanished into the shadowed depths. "No," she whispered. "No, no, no." She dipped her hand in, icy cold, reached with a branch, lay on her belly and stretched, but it was far too deep. And then a sound, not the rush of wind, not the croak of frogs in the reeds, but a voice. "Why do you weep, princess?" She froze. Slowly she turned her head toward the far side of the spring. There, half hidden in shadow, sat a frog, not large, not small, greenish gold and sleek, with bulbous eyes that blinked slowly and evenly. He wore nothing, of course, except, perhaps, a small ripple of dignity that clung to him like a cloak. "I dropped my ball," she said, too surprised to wonder at speaking to a frog. "It's gold, very precious." "I saw," said the frog. There was silence. Trees creaked softly. "Would you like it back?" he asked. "Yes," she said, "very much." "Then I will fetch it for you," he said, "but only if you promise me something in return." She blinked. "What sort of thing?" "To be my companion," said the frog, "to let me eat from your plate, drink from your cup, and rest on your pillow." She stared at him. Surely he was joking, but his face did not smile. He only blinked once, slowly. "Yes," she said at last, with a nervous laugh. "Of course, anything." He nodded, almost regally, and slipped beneath the surface. Moments later, he rose again with the golden ball balanced between his hands. She reached for it. "Thank you." But before he could speak, she had turned and run, faster than wind, faster than worry, back to the castle, the ball clutched to her chest. She did not look back. She did not keep her promise. And far behind her, in the cool hush of the willow spring, the frog sat alone, the water dripping slowly from his skin. But he did not look angry, only patient, as though he had waited longer than this already. Chapter 2. The Guest at the Castle Gate. That evening the castle hummed with its usual evening bustle. Footsteps on flagstones, the chime of silverware, the slow bell that marked the hour for supper. The youngest princess sat at the long oak table beside her sisters and the king. Her golden ball rested in her lap beneath the linen. She held it tightly, still warm from the sun, and said nothing of how it had been lost or found. But her thoughts were unsettled. Every time the wine shimmered in the goblet or the soup rippled in the bowl, she imagined the frog's eyes blinking from beneath the surface. His voice echoed in her mind. "To eat from your plate, to rest on your pillow," she had promised. Yes, but only to a frog, and only in play. Words spoken in panic, never meant to last. Surely that didn't count. Surely nothing would come of it. Just as the third course was served, honey-roasted parsnips and bread with violet jelly, a strange sound echoed down the stone hallways. Squish, splat, squish. It came slowly, rhythmically, like something soft with too many toes approaching over polished stone. Then a pause. Then a knock. 3 deliberate taps on the grand wooden doors of the banquet hall. The chamberlain hesitated. The king raised a brow. "Who knocks like that at supper?" murmured the eldest sister. The youngest said nothing, but her hand tightened around the ball. The doors creaked open, and there, standing on the threshold, glistening and utterly unbothered by the crowd of startled nobles, was the frog, the very same. Small, green, gold-flecked, calm. He cleared his throat, a delicate, wet little sound. "Princess," he said, "I have come to collect what was promised." The hall fell into silence. The king turned to his daughter. "Is this true?" he asked gently. She stared at her plate. "I didn't mean it. I was frightened. It was just a game." But the king did not smile. His voice remained steady. "A promise is a promise, child, and a royal promise is never small. But he's a frog. she whispered. "All the more reason to be honourable," said the king. "One does not measure worth by shape." Reluctantly, she nodded. The frog hopped forward, not arrogantly, but with the dignity of one who knew how long things could take when magic was involved. He was placed gently on a small velvet cushion beside her chair. The meal continued. The frog asked for nothing more than to share from her plate, which he did politely and with surprising neatness. He made no mess. He did not croak or slurp. When he drank from her goblet, he sipped. The nobles watched, murmuring behind their hands. The princess barely spoke. After supper, the king kissed his daughters good night. The courtiers filed out. Candles were dimmed. She rose, thinking she would sneak away to her chambers alone. But the frog followed. Splat! Squish! Squish! Splat! His eyes ever blinking, his movements slow and soft. And when she shut her door behind her, heart pounding, he knocked once. "Princess," he said from the other side, "you said I could sleep upon your pillow." "No," she whispered. "Please," said the frog. She hesitated. Her heart thudded. The golden ball sat on her desk, gleaming in the candlelight. She opened the door. He entered without fanfare, hopped once, and waited. She fetched a silk handkerchief and folded it at the foot of the bed. "You may sleep there," she said. He said nothing, simply settled into the cloth, tucking his limbs beneath him with a faint, contented sigh. And in that quiet, with only the soft rustle of willow branches brushing the window, the princess turned out the lamp and lay beside him, eyes open, unsure, listening to the breath of someone she did not yet understand. And beneath the silence, deeper than the castle stones, something began to shift. Chapter 3. A bed made for a frog. The night passed in stillness. The princess did not sleep easily. She turned beneath her coverlet, fidgeted with her braid, stared up at the carved ceiling where the candlelight once danced. Below, on the folded handkerchief, the frog lay unmoving. He made no sound, no croaking, no sighing, just quiet breath, as steady as moonlight through the window. When dawn arrived, grey and soft, she sat up slowly. The frog blinked awake. "Thank you," he said with simple sincerity. She stared at him. "You're welcome." He did not ask for breakfast. He did not follow her to the morning chamber. When she returned later, he was sitting near the hearth, warming his slick skin beside the fire. He looked small there, not magical, just odd. That night he knocked again, and again the next, and with each passing day the princess grew less tense, less uncertain. Still confused, still hesitant, but not angry. He never pushed, never demanded. He only reminded her, in his soft, watery voice, of what had been promised. And somehow she found herself keeping it. One evening, as she sat by the window brushing her hair, he spoke from his spot on the sill. "Do you remember," he said gently, "what you felt when the ball fell into the spring?" She blinked. "Yes," she said. "It was like losing a piece of myself, like something I loved had vanished for good." He nodded, as best a frog can nod. "I know that feeling well." She turned to him. "You mean—" But he said nothing more. just looked out at the stars. From that night on, he no longer slept on the folded cloth. She let him share the pillow, hesitantly at first, then without comment. He was careful to leave room. He tucked his legs neatly. He did not stir, and strangely the bed did not feel crowded. It felt less lonely. One morning, before sunrise, she found him sitting at the edge of her wash basin, gazing into the water. "Will you ever tell me who you are?" she asked quietly. "I am a prince," he replied without turning. She smiled faintly. "Are you now?" "Cursed," he added, "for a long time, for something I refused to do, or perhaps for something I did." "And the spell? It ends," he said, "when someone sees me as more than what I seem." The princess looked at him then, truly looked. His eyes were wide and soft, the colour of pond water and moss. His skin shone faintly in the light, but his expression, it was almost human, sad, wise, hopeful. "How long have you been like this?" 100 years, he said. "Give or take?" She said nothing more. That night, as she lay down beside him, she did not pull away, and for the first time she whispered, "Good night." The frog gave a quiet sound, not quite a croak, not quite a sigh, and closed his eyes. And as sleep came to her, the princess wondered if perhaps she had been under a spell too, not cast by a witch, but by her own expectations, her own assumptions, her own fear of what didn't fit the story she thought she knew. Chapter 4. The Secret Beneath the Skin. The days drifted by, one into another, like petals falling into a stream. Each morning arrived quiet and pale, each night closed with the hush of candle smoke and soft breathing. The castle no longer murmured about the frog. He had simply become part of it. He sat beside the princess at meals, balanced neatly on a folded napkin. He did not speak unless spoken to, but when he did, his words were thoughtful, measured, and surprisingly gentle. The servants, at first baffled, came to treat him with careful respect. They wiped his place at the table as they would any nobles. They left a small dish of water by the fire in the evenings, and sometimes even warmed pebbles, so he might rest upon them when the hearth went cold. In the mornings, the princess would often find him waiting by her window, watching the light spread over the hills, his eyes blinking slowly. Some mornings she joined him in silence. Others, they spoke. "What is the first thing you remember?" she asked once, her voice low with sleep. He didn't answer right away. "I remember trees, my old forest, a still pond. I was not born royal. I was made one." She turned to him. "What do you mean?" "I was not raised with silk and gold. I was chosen, anointed when I was 13. The crown was a surprise, but I wore it." "Did you like it?" "No," he said honestly, "but I tried to wear it well." Their conversations grew longer, richer, stranger. They spoke of stars and of poetry and of the softness of moss after rain. He recited old stories, not from books, but from memory, things no one in her court had ever heard, tales of ruined temples in distant mountains, of lanterns that floated on windless nights, of creatures older than any curse. She listened, not as a princess to a subject, or a girl to a beast, but as one quiet soul to another. One evening, as they sat in the small solar, lit only by the fire and the fading sky, she asked, "Why do you never complain?" The frog tilted his head. "About what?" "About this, your form, your voice, your days spent hopping around a place that barely remembers magic." He was quiet a long time. "Because it's mine," he said at last, "and I've learned to live inside it. Complaining does not uncurse me. It only makes the world smaller." She stared at the flames, nodding slowly. "You speak like someone who has been alone a very long time. I have." The words sat between them, bare and soft. Later that night she sat cross-legged on her bed, brushing her hair while he warmed himself on a stone by the brazier. "You know," she said after a long silence, "I didn't like you at first." He chuckled, a strange bubbling sound that seemed to come from deep in his throat. "I noticed," she smiled, "but I thought you were being cruel, demanding, forcing me to keep a promise I made in panic." "I was doing none of those things," he said. "I only reminded you of what you said, of who you might be, who I might be." He nodded. "People are often more than they allow themselves to become. Sometimes all it takes is a mirror, or a frog." The fire cracked softly. She studied him. "Do you miss it?" "Miss what?" "Your face, your hands, your voice, your self." He closed his eyes. "Sometimes I miss walking without hopping. I miss leaves crunching beneath my boots. I miss lifting a cup with fingers, turning pages, but mostly I miss being seen, truly seen, without the veil of strangeness between us." She thought for a while, then said, "I think I see you now." The frog opened his eyes, and for the first time something passed between them. Not magic, not light, but a stillness, deep and reverent. "Then you are rare," he said. "Was that what the curse required?" she asked softly. "For someone to see you? Not as a prince, not as a frog, but as you?" "Yes," he replied, "though I think it meant for me to learn too. Patience, humility, grace. Have you?" she asked. "I've had time." She laughed gently. "Then who cursed you?" He shifted slightly. "My betrothed's aunt. She was old, powerful, and very angry." "You refused a marriage?" "I refused a lifetime with someone who did not love, who did not listen, and who saw people as steps in a ladder. I broke a vow arranged by others, and so I was changed into a frog." He nodded. "And sent to wait beside a spring," he added, "until someone made a promise freely, and chose to keep it despite disgust or fear. Only then would the spell unravel." She went quiet, then said, "I made the promise, but I did not keep it. Not right away. You came back to it," he said. "That matters more." That night, as moonlight poured through her windows and the wind stirred the curtains, she did something she had not done before. She picked him up, gently, carefully, and placed him on the pillow beside her. She tucked the quilt around them both and lay facing him, her hands beneath her cheek. He did not speak, nor did she. They simply rested together. Two beings, tangled in enchantment and truth, waiting in the quiet hours before something unknown. And outside, the willow trees whispered, and far below, at the spring where it all began, the water stirred for the first time in many years, not from wind, but from something older, deeper, as though the world itself had turned over in its sleep and smiled. Chapter 5. The dawn without a spell. The morning came quietly. Mist clung to the orchard, dew silvered the window-sills, and the castle's old stones stretched under the warmth of new sunlight. The princess woke just before dawn, as she often did now, not because she had to, but because it felt right to be present at the first light of day. Beside her, on the pillow, the frog still slept. His breathing was slow and even. One tiny webbed foot twitched as though dreaming. She watched him for a while, wondering what it must feel like to carry a skin that wasn't yours for so long that it began to feel like home. He stirred, blinked once. "Good morning," she said. "Good morning," he replied, a little groggy. She sat up slowly. The golden ball sat on her desk nearby, untouched for days. It seemed smaller now, a child's treasure, not a heart's longing. "Do you still believe the spell will break?" she asked gently. He shrugged, a small lift of round shoulders. "I don't know. I used to. Then I didn't. Now, it doesn't matter so much." She looked at him for a long time, and then, without thinking too hard about it, she cupped him gently in her hands, as she had once held that golden ball, and brought him to her heart. Not because she had to, not because she believed in transformation, but because he mattered to her, just like this. She pressed a kiss, light as breath, to the top of his head. A sigh passed between them, not magical, not sparkling, just soft and warm, and then everything paused, not the world, not the castle, just the moment. The air held its breath. The room stilled, and in her hands something shifted, not violently, not suddenly, but like spring arriving underground, like a river remembering how to run. The frog grew warm, then heavy. She gasped, nearly dropping him. The limbs stretched, lengthened, the skin smoothed and brightened. Webbed feet became fingers. The croak in his throat vanished like mist at sunrise, and when she opened her eyes, a young man sat where the frog had been, not grand, not glittering, just quietly, unmistakably himself. His eyes were the same, moss green, thoughtful, kind. His hair was dark and slightly curled. His smile, when it came, was small and unsure. "Hello," he said. She stared, then laughed. "Shoes," she said. "You'll need shoes." They both laughed then. He stood carefully, as though testing his weight after a long sleep, and walked to the mirror. He studied his reflection not with pride, but with quiet curiosity. "I had almost forgotten," he murmured, "how it felt to look and see myself." She came to stand beside him. "How long has it truly been?" 107 years, he said. "And some days." She nodded slowly, then looked at him again. "And now? Now I begin again?" Not as a prince, I think, just as a man. And me, you, he said, turning to her, are the reason I remember how. They stood in silence. The fire crackled. The mist outside began to lift. Later that day, the court would gather. Questions would be asked. Answers would come slowly, wrapped in old magic and quiet truths. The king would listen. The queen would blink back tears. The people would murmur, and the story would spread like dawnlight through a forest. But for now, there was only the two of them. She reached for his hand. He took it. No enchantment flared. No music swelled. Only warmth passed between their palms, and something stronger than a spell. A promise kept, a kindness returned, a beginning chosen freely. And if anyone asked, in the years to come, how the frog became a prince again, she would say only this: he was never really anything else.